Working both in urban situations, rural, and now I'm edging into small farms with forest gardening, which is using permaculture principles of lower maintenance and a lot of mulching and long-term food production. So I'm here today to talk about several of quite underused foods that we have, abundantly available, believe it or not. One is the quince, which comes in two varieties. There's a standard tree that usually will grow to about 15 to 20 feet in mature size. And then there's also the quince shrub, which is better known as the Asian variety, the Japanese quince. This is a young one, a couple years old. But the quince shrubs, also known as Rose of Sharon, I'm sure you've all seen them, kind of little coral waxy flowers. And then a smaller version of the fruit, about the size of the crab apples, but they are small quince. So these are very abundant. They're very bitter if you've ever tried to taste them. So usually these are used for preserves and either boiling them down for pectin, because they're both very high in pectin, both from the shrub and the tree varieties. Pectin's very healthy in our digestive system. It acts as an emulsifier, and it carries a lot of other vitamins, nutrients, and minerals in it as well. So, are many people familiar with quince at all? Is anyone? Yes, you are here. I'm not speaking to the quince is originally in the Rosa family, the apples and pears. It's known as a medieval fruit. You'll see it in the old paintings a lot. And they did have quince because it's rock hard. You have to actually cook it. It's not something that you eat raw. So, and it's got a bit of a fuzz on it, so it doesn't look very friendly in the beginning. But that can easily just wash off. Normally, I just score them with a knife. I used to use a fork, but I went through a number of forks before I learned that lesson. And then you can either steam them gently, or I bake them, roast them just directly in the oven, and they're amazing, just like baked apples. But you do have to be aware that it's a very hard core. So normally what I do is I try to double process. Once I've steamed them or baked them and I've cut them, and then I can either make quince sauce, like apple sauce, or add them into like an apple crisp, half and half, or some blackberries in there. It has a bit of a tang, a tart, a perfume sweetness to it. I'm going to pass one around so that you can kind of get to know it and feel it and smell it. And they're a bit unusual that way. But the medievalists grew these and the crab apples, which I'll get into, because a lot of the animals weren't able to eat them raw. So we've got these beautiful, magnificent trees that have huge crops, and they're very abundant, and they ripen late in the season when a lot of other things are finished. And the deer won't touch them, nor the leaves, nor the bark. Take note. Perfect urban landscaping specimen tree. And that's how I've used them a lot in the Comox Valley and encourage their growth. But I'm using them now in forest gardens on the edges, you know, where you've got your woodland, and people say, well, we can't plant apples and pears there. But you can plant quince and crabapple and hawthorn, and that's why I've done that trio, because that's often in that kind of edge landscaping or in hedgerows, restoring the old hedgerows, which had them all. So the Portuguese people have developed from making a jam out of it.
When you say you make the pectin from it, are you making the pectin for other fruit jams?
Yes, yeah, any other purpose as a thickening agent. The pectin nutritionally is a very healthy substance for us in our body. It's not, just to make jam or to add sugar to. You can use it without sugar. I rarely use any sugar in my baking. I'll do quince and a few Oregon grape berries or blackberries and, hazelnuts and a bit of oatmeal, that kind of thing. And they're very abundant, and the trees, so the shrubs get pretty big, but you do have to boil them down and sweeten them with something, other fruit sauce or juice. So either of them are great for landscaping as well as on a forest edge or, outside your perimeters. So they could be in boulevards all along the highway if you wanted to. Crab apples, they are eaten a bit more by animals because they're great. Over the years of processing them, I eat them more and more raw. When I went to a forest garden workshop, we tested them with the Brix meter, which measures the sugar content of them, and it went right off the scale. It was over 24. It's very, very high in the natural, even though it's very tart, that means it's got a lot of vitamin C and a lot of other things in it, but it went off the scale for nutritional value. So I eat them raw, and I'll just steam them just a couple minutes. It doesn't take very long, and then I'll have crabapple sauce. So now that when I don't have very many, then I add that to regular applesauce, and it can kind of perk it up a little bit. But these are incredibly abundant. And for harvesting, it's like mulberries. You can spread your sheet. It's not too big a tree, because once I tried to shake a huge old tree, and I think I just hurt myself, it wouldn't budge. But a younger tree, you can actually shake limb by limb, each scaffold branch at a time. And when they're ripe, they will just fall gently on grass and on a blanket, and that's how I've harvested them a lot. I came to these fruits through the Lush Valley Fruit Tree Program because they put the call out for them and no one else would go. And that's how I started harvesting and learning about them. I thought, well, why aren't people going to get these? I love the spiced crab apples, and I make those. But I'll freeze them. And now what I do also, because I'm eating them more raw, but if I can't eat them all, I will slice them about a 1/4 inch thick and then in the dehydrator. And then I have dried crabapple rings throughout the year, and they're usually my little gift packages, if I've ever given them to you. And they are tart, but they're really better than gum. You can chew them a long time and they actually reconstitute. So for this Healthy School program, I invite you to try the crabapple rings and some baked quince. We mentioned hawthorn. Hawthorn's also in the rose family, and you'll see it wild. A lot of people aren't very familiar with it, or they don't want to become too familiar because it's got a lot of thorns, the wild ones. So they have been traditionally used in the hedgerows. And they're also seeded in the ditches a lot, I've noticed, in the Comox Valley. And I think that's partially not that they were planted there, but as the birds come, they're dropping the seeds from the original planted hedgerows. And so they just tend to be growing in the ditches. And it is a place to harvest if you know that the soil or the water is good. Now, hawthorn is not used in our culture very much as food. It's used more medicinally. It's an excellent heart remedy, usually in an extract or a tea from the berries and the leaves. It will be very good for your blood circulation on high and low blood pressure. So it's all to do with increasing the health of your heart. So it's an underused remedy as opposed to a food here. But one time in Chinatown, I found these little hawthorn confection treats. You know how they wrap up in little paper and you think, oh, what a waste of paper. But when I opened them and I tried them, what it was, they had made a type of candy. It wasn't very sweet. And they had just chipped and dried hawthorn flakes together. And that's how I ate them as a food for the first time. And I think it's that Chinese principle where you're using food as your medicine. So if you have that from time to time, you don't want to have that daily because it is medicinal, but it will always help you, you know, in your circulation and all of that. So, just to wrap up, I did want to venture into a couple other of the vegetable underused family. One is the globe artichoke. Also, the animals won't bother it. So again, you can grow it outside your fence lines. And their globe artichoke can get really large. They're perennial. They're very high on the permaculture list. They're very beautiful. They have a beautiful purple flower, and then the green globe that you steam and just chew the ends of the leaves. Now those are also very medicinal too. They're cleansing, and they actually rebuild constituents in the artichoke can help rebuild liver cells. So that's just something really good to know. I mean, we love the artichoke hearts in the canned jars, but they're so easy to grow, and they are perennial and drought tolerant. And you don't eat them. I mean, you can't get better than that. And the last one I want to mention is one of my favorite families, the chicory or the endive family. It's in the list of bitter greens. I always say bitter is better, because again, it's cleansing your liver and your kidneys and your blood system. And if you can grow these even as a winter vegetable, because they do prefer cooler aspects or shady aspects of your garden. Like, never say never, you can't grow vegetables in the shade, because we do have a whole list of shade vegetables. But the endives just start coming into their own about this time of year. And you can actually pick leaves from them throughout the winter. Some of the varieties are frost tolerant. There's escarole, which is like a taller lettuce, and then frisée, which is a French, very fuzzy, frilly kind, and then the red one, the radicchio. So I think we're all familiar with that as a gourmet green. So I hope that you get inspired and start using some of these underused fruits and vegetables in your garden. Any questions? Well, for the shrub, I mean, this is 2 or 3 years old. Again, most fruits and nuts, by the time you get to shrubs and trees, you're looking at a few fruit at the beginning of 5 years, and not a good harvest till 7, 8 years. And that's pretty well throughout the fruit and nut family. So, you know what they say, the best time to plant a fruit tree is 20 years ago.
There's something about the quince that's incredibly resilient. I mean, I tried to, one was in the wrong place for me a while ago, and I tried to get rid of it. It kept coming back and growing. They're very hardy.
They're very hardy. Yeah, all of these are very hardy rootstocks. They're older European or heritage varieties. Everything I've mentioned there. It's very hardy and cold. Like a lot of the fruit trees we have that are grafted, the fancy varieties, they're actually on quince rootstock.
Any more questions? Okay. My grandparents used to have a huge bush that was a combination of what they called japonica and raspberries, and it was incredible. Is japonica, as we might commonly see it in our gardens now, part of the quince family?
In that terminology, this is called Japanese quince. So that's what the japonica is referring to. You can have a lot of things that are from Japan will have that handle, so you actually need the last name. And the last name of this one, I can hardly say it, it's C-E-O-N-T-H, Xenophis, something like that. Yeah. So you have to get really specific
Okay.
with it. I don't. I was just asked last night to do this talk, and all my books are away. Yeah. But I can post it on the Lush Valley website. How about I do that? Everything I've mentioned, lushvalley.org, and I'll just put in a little note on underused fruits and vegetables, and I'll list all the Latin names of all the plants I've spoken of. Okay, so good luck.